Hi, everyone. There are still people coming in. We had an amazing sign up for this event. So it's going to be very well attended, and we're so excited. This is going to be great. So welcome, welcome, welcome. Hope you all are staying cool. Are maybe getting out of the Arizona heat every once in a while. It is really pretty brutal. I have people who have been contacting me who I haven't heard from in years saying, are you alive? Or, are you living through this? And so far I am. So welcome, everyone. I'm just making sure people get in. We'll just be starting in a couple of minutes. Want everybody to get their audio going. We have a lot of material to cover tonight. Okay. Entries seem to have slowed down a little bit. It's 6:01. Let's just give it one more minute.
Maybe while they're joining, could they put in the chat what part of the state they're calling in from so people can experience all the hot and cold that Arizona really is? Drop in the chat what city you're in and maybe what your temperature was today, if you know it, or yesterday. Let's see, we got Scottsdale, we got Phoenix. Come on. I know there's some
Minneapolis, all right.
Sanford.
I love Sanford.
Oro Valley, Apache Junction, Sun Lakes. Oh man, we got the whole state here. Avondale, Flagstaff. Oh, 93 degrees.
A lot of Tucson. Oh, Pine Top Lakeside. I bet it's nicer up. Look, 87 up there. Oh, hi, Mary.
Mesa. We're getting the whole state here.
Seattle, 79 degrees. I am on my way. Evergreen, Colorado. Oh, so excited to have people here from out of state. If it's your first time coming to a Civic Engagement Beyond Voting meeting, feel free to put that in the chat. We love to have newcomers. We have a lot of people who've been coming for a long time to our meetings, but it just warms my heart to have people who are new. So welcome, welcome, welcome. So excited to see you. So I am going to go ahead and get started. It's 6:03. We try to be prompt to be respecting your time. Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, we are nonpartisan, nonprofit 501c4 organization here in Arizona. Our one purpose is to engage people with their state and local government, and registering them to vote could not be more important. So we are thrilled to be able to launch a brand new initiative for us, a collaboration with the Civic Center, an amazing organization to register high school students to vote. Our chat is always very, very active. Feel free to put questions there. We have a very packed program. We are not going to allow people to unmute, but if you have a question, you can put it in the chat and we will try to answer it as we go. So, I would like to introduce Laura Brill. Let me actually backtrack for a second. Our run of show is going to be that Laura Brill will give a 15-minute or so presentation that will sort of be the lay of the land. What is the program about? Why is it important to register young voters? How this program originated. So we'll get some really great sort of ground setting information right at the beginning. Then we will go into a conversation where I will be able to ask some questions back and forth. And so we'll have some conversation that could dig a little more into that material, into that information. And then in the last 15 minutes, we will launch our youth high school voter registration initiative, and we will tell you exactly how to sign up and how to get involved. So I hope that makes sense. Laura Brill is the founder of the Civic Center, which has the singular mission of registering high school voters to vote. And it is amazing to have an organization that has taken on that challenge. It is shocking to see some of the low numbers of young people who are actually registered to vote. One of the things I love to see in your bio, Laura, is that you were a clerk for Justice Ginsburg, and that I think sets all of our hearts going. So with no further ado, I'm going to turn it over to you, Laura.
Great. Well, thank you, Kathy, and thank you for everybody who's joined today. I just think it's a remarkable achievement to have so many passionate people, coming on in the middle of summer to launch a high school event and to care about civic engagement beyond voting. I just wanted to give a shout out also generally to the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting group. You all have been just a dream to work with, and your mission of getting people activated throughout Arizona to understand how their government works and to engage at every level just couldn't be more important. So I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. I will talk about my obsession, high school voter registration, which aren't the most, I wish there were more exciting words that could describe how important and impactful this opportunity is, and also what a challenge it is to do something so obvious as helping young people to register to vote as soon as they turn, while they're still in high school and while they're coming alive to the possibilities of their own interaction with government and what it can mean for them. So for something that should be so quick and easy and universal, it's anything but. And I'll just share with you that my presentation focuses mostly on the possibilities, the data behind it, and why we believe this is going to work in terms of really bolstering our democracy, and then some of the obstacles and how we address them, how we've been addressing them. So I'm going to share my screen, and if I can, let's see, here we go. And launch into slideshow mode. Sorry, my computer's a little slow. Okay, so here we go. When we talk about voter registration and we talk about youth voting in general, the number on the left, 23%, is what everybody thinks of. And when you talk about young people, you say young people in voting, the first thing that comes to mind for almost everybody is young people don't turn out. And this year, a group called Circle at Tufts published that 23% of young people, they look at 18 to 29-year-olds, voted in the midterms. And so this gets everybody very down and like, why are we bothering? And everybody it reinforces the stereotype of young people don't care. And one of the reasons that really I started the Civic Center was to counter this notion that young people don't care and don't turn out. And the number I find really interesting, really compelling and exciting is the number on the right, 86%. And what that represents, I will submit, is far more important. It's a percentage of registered youth who turn out. When young people are registered in important high-profile elections, they turn out at very high rates. So this chart is showing the percentage of young people who turned out for the presidential election in 2020. And you can see 18-year-olds who are 88%. We've broken it down year by year, 19, 86.6, 20-year-olds, 85%. We get a dip around 83%. I'm sorry, did I say 25? 85.3, and then back up for 23 and 24-year-olds above 85% of them turning out in the presidential election when they were registered. And when I do these presentations, I always kind of am anticipating critiques I've heard or questions I've heard pop up when I've given it other times. So one question that pops up is, okay, but 2020 was a pretty weird year in so many ways. Maybe that was an anomaly. Well, we looked at that and no, it was not. Go back. It was not an anomaly. Every presidential election going back to 2004, more than 75% of registered youth turned out. And so we have every reason, especially in Arizona, where we know the eyes of the country are going to be focused, and you all are going to be focused on your own state and local elections as well as national elections. Every reason to believe that young people are going to be very engaged and care a lot about the election in 2024. Okay, so what do these numbers look like in terms of those? I showed you some percentages, but when we look at the youngest voters, only in 2020, only 52% of 18 and 19-year-olds were registered in the first place. It's because of these low registration rates that that you end up, if there's not 100% turnout, you end up with these low overall turnout numbers. But so 52% is not a good registration rate for people whose futures depend about what's happening in the upcoming election. For 45-year-olds and above, it's 77%. So you've got a 25 percentage point just registration gap between the youngest voters and 45 and above. And that registration gap alone is 2 million, what we call, missing registered 18-year-olds. And, when you think about some of the other voter suppression issues that get huge prominence, huge play, huge budgets, lawsuits, everything, it's many of them. I mean, they're all important. I'm not trying to suggest that they're not, but many of them numerically just don't have the numbers of every year 2 million missing registrations in our country, and so little attention being paid to the youngest voters. So we've broken it down on a state by state level. This is focusing on the states where young people have the greatest capacity to make a difference in their elections because they historically have very close elections. Arizona, you've got 180,000 young people turning 18 and 19, and for who 2024 is going to be their first election. Adding all the states up, these states here, you've got 10 states, 3 million people turning 18 and 19. And here we compare people turning 18 over a 4-year cycle to a margin of victory in the presidential election in 2020. So this was in Pennsylvania, the margin of victory was 82,000. Well, you have 620,000 kids turning 18. I think I have Arizona next. Yes. 360,000 young people turning 18 in every 4-year cycle. And your margin of victory was about 10,000 in 2020. And of course, you had very close elections for Secretary of State and for governor in the midterms. So you can do this, you could do a similar chart for the midterms and looking at different state elections that also get decided by margins that are just dwarfed by the number of young people who we have an opportunity to engage. Michigan's also a similar story. So I like to show this because I just think it's a very dramatic display of what the potential is. So what we're up against is really youth voter suppression, which can happen because of intentionally stopping young people from voting, or what we call just inattention, not paying attention to the fact that we've got young people turning 18 every year, and how do we welcome them into our democracy. So there's a lack of information and outreach, lack of civics education, real challenges with data, research, supportive laws and policies, and overall coordination and accountability. And actually, just on that coordination point, it's one of the reasons we're so happy to have a partnership like we have with Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, because it takes everybody, people on the ground embedded in their communities, and then other organizations to help support and to create, help create the framework for it to happen on a national level. So we focus on pre-registering teens in high school. And our phrase is, we're bringing voter registration to every high school in America. Here's another objection we hear, which is, well, that won't work because young people can't register until they're 18. And it turns out that's just not true. So these light purple states allow pre-registration as soon as a voter turns 16. So they can sign up, fill out a form, and then as soon as they turn 18, they're just automatically registered. So those teens have two, sometimes more than 2 full years to get registered while they're in high school. These vibrant pink states, which Arizona is one, allow at least a year to register before a first election. And then in these more kind of greenish gray states, those are the states that make it a real challenge. It's less than a year to register before a first election. And our friends in Texas, they will not let you submit your form until you're 17 years and 10 months. Because of course, everybody else could re-register when they're 16, but Texas, we don't trust young people to register till they're 17 and 10 months. So, but what I like to say is, even in a state that's doing all it can to make it hard to vote and to suppress youth in particular, almost everybody in high school is old enough by the time they graduate. And so even in Texas, we can do a large amount of work to help young people register and vote. And of course, Arizona has quite a bit of opportunity, more opportunity than that. We love working in high schools because they're efficient. You have everybody together. They're equitable because about 40% of high schools don't go on to college. So as important as the college work is, it doesn't touch those 40% who don't attend college. And we have a recurring educational cycle in which to welcome young people and to get them going on a lifelong habit of voting. Another just differentiator when people talk about youth, many times people talk about youth voting, and I mentioned that circle statistic at the beginning, they're talking about 18 to 29-year-olds. Sometimes they're talking about 18 to 35-year-olds. And this is just from a social perspective and an organizing perspective, it's not really a sensible category. I mean, 18-year-olds, you can see them on the left, are just in a totally different social environment. They have parents very much involved. They're involved in different institutions, different music, just, different social and economic concerns. So it's really important to have a dedicated high school program like you all are in the process of launching. Another sort of pushback we get is, well, it's all online and everybody's saying on their social media posts, register and vote. And what we see, and I think is important to recognize, that this is a first step. This is an administrative issue that can be, registration at least, can be a hassle. And voting is social, and politics, it's a social endeavor. And I think for all of you who are here today, I'm going to bet that you're here because somebody or somebody you're in real social contact with told you about this organization, encouraged you to come. And it's the same for young people. They need, a lot of these things of like providing an ID or knowing what county you live in or what are the last 4 digits of your social security number. it's really important to have this all take place in an on-site, in-person, peer-supported network that is socially encouraging to young people, because what they want to do is they want to be involved in something that feels good from a social perspective, as well as that, it's just like the right thing to do. And I'm going to take a pause for a second on this photograph, because all these photographs you're seeing, of young people being excited about the work, that's what happens every time the teams do these drives, is they are working with their friends. They're doing something that's like a little out of their comfort zone in terms of working with the administration and, going up to somebody they don't know and asking them to register to vote. And it brings out this, yes, we can kind of togetherness feel for them, which is equally important. I'm just going to go quickly and talk about why we know it works, and then we want to open it up to Q&A, and specifically what our contribution can be. We focus on data and drives, and we provide training and events. So we've created these scorecards to measure voter registration rates for 18-year-olds on a school district by school district basis. And this helps create accountability for the school districts. And it also is very motivating for the students to say, okay, I can't solve global warming today, but I actually can move the needle on this one very important metric, and I'm gonna do that. So that's our data piece. And then the other is to create the framework for students to be trained and educators to be trained to hold voter registration drives in their schools. There's a great deal of policy work we can do. There's a lot of, we can pass a Youth Voting Rights Act if we could, if Congress would be willing to support democracy in a more robust way. But we can, even without better legislative supports than we have now, this is something that's actionable immediately, is for young people just to get one another registered, and for their families and communities to help. I think I'll stop after this slide just to make sure we have enough time for everything else. We have 2 tentpole events that we encourage students to hold every year in every high school. Cap, Gown, and Ballot is in the spring, with the concept of, graduation is a deadline for these 40% who are not going on to college. We have to get it done by then. And High School Voter Registration Week in the fall as a kickoff to get the school year started, and to align the school calendar with election calendar to take advantage of the fall, especially in even years when there's big elections happening. So I will, so thank you. I would love to answer questions and to just have a dialogue about this important work that you're about to embark on.
Great. Thank you so much, Laura. That was all very enlightening. There's so much information that we don't know, particularly when in any sort of a demographic study, they do group, 18 to 29-year-olds. And really the high school population is very, very specific. And that's actually one of the things that attracted me to this program, because it's very focused. And it's also, we're incredibly fortunate to be able to collaborate with an organization that already has a system in place. And we will be talking about that a little bit later in the program. We will give you, I promise to everybody on the call, a real 1, 2, 3, here's what we're asking you to do. But there are some general questions that I wanted to ask. I mean, one of them sort of personal. What brought you into this work, and what inspired you to do this?
Yes, well, everybody has their own motivating story, and my story is so similar to what I imagine brought many people here today. And that was, after the 2016 election, just feeling, oh my goodness, we are seeing so many fundamental challenges to what we thought were the core established, pillars of our country, and, attacks on the independence of the federal courts, pleas to racism and to like welcoming racism into public life in a way that was it's not that we've never had these problems before, but that was a step beyond, what I think we've been seeing throughout much of our lifetimes, and wondering, gosh, why hadn't young people turned out more in 2016? And my own children were 15 and 16 at the time, and I just was very curious, what was it that kept young people from voting? And I picked up I'm a lawyer, I picked up the California election code because I figured, maybe that has the answers for me. After I Googled it, first I Googled it, and it says, well, young people just basically suck, they're apathetic, they're self-centered, they're on their phones, they're watching video games, they don't care. And I thought, that's not what I see when I look at young people. And like, yes, they're on their phones, but I'm on my phone. And, anyway, I found in the California election code this pre-registration law. And it was just, one of these aha moments that set off light bulbs for me, because I've handled election-related litigation matters, and had this clerkship with Justice Ginsburg, and have teens of this age, and how did I not know about this law? And so it just, one of those things where you see something and you get curious about it, and the more I dug, the more I saw, oh my goodness, there's opportunity all over the country and not being used. So in California, we had this great law, but nobody knew about it. Nobody was implementing it, almost. I mean, some people knew about it and were implementing it, but very sparse. And it just said, okay, well, this is, first of all, I thought it was going to be much easier. I did not realize how hard this would be. So I think if someone had told me how difficult it would be to get attention for the issue and to, try to galvanize support and, to get to the point where we can have a meeting like this, I think I would have been a little scared off, but I was naive. and so I jumped in.
One thing I absolutely love about that story is that you always get asked questions, well, who is doing this? Who is doing that? Somebody must be doing it. And you finally figure out when nobody's doing it, it's like, okay, well, maybe I will do it. And I cannot count the number of times I have not known what I was getting into. And looking back said, if I had known, I probably wouldn't have done it. So it's a good thing I didn't know.
Yes, I just will give one little anecdote. When my kids were littler, and I was trying to help them learn how to clean up after dinner, for example, and they would say like, well, what do I do now? And what do I do now? And I'd say, well, why don't you look around for something that needs doing and do it to try to develop that self propulsion. So I think I took my own advice.
That's great. That is wonderful. One of the things, talking about sort of the myths that are surrounding young people, have you looked into what is motivating kids to vote? And how do you motivate them to vote and realize the importance of voting?
Yes, well, actually, there's a recent report from the Harvard Institute for Policy that does a big youth poll every year. And, I think it's what you read about in the paper. They care deeply. Climate change, reproductive rights, the way gun violence is intruding on their communities, racial justice and equality issues, generally, and the sort of atmosphere of bullying is very offensive to them. And mental health is something that doesn't receive, very much attention as a youth issue all the time, but is very concerning to young people. So those are affordable housing and education, I think, are the other ones I would mention. And, in terms of how, it's civics education has been cut terribly. And so creating space for them to talk about these issues, it comes up because they're living with it. You all just put the temperature today in the chat. So it's, when we help students connect their own lives to public issues and ask them about, point out the different ways that policy may be affecting them, they see it.
Mm-hmm.
They see it. Yeah.
Great, great. I mean, that is what I've heard as well, is that understanding, you connect to them through the issues, not through the parties or the politicians or, anything of that nature.
Yeah.
So this is Arizona. And it is very different from, some of the other more progressive states, although I have to tell you, sometimes Arizona surprises you. Voting by mail, very, very popular here. It's been in effect for decades.
Mhm.
But I think that in Arizona, there's so much hostility that we see and so much extremism around the state. Have you ever encountered that in any of your registration events?
We have encountered almost no resistance, I have to say. It's been so encouraging. And I think one of the reasons is because we get the students are the ones propelling this. So when a student and that dynamic of a student, coming to a training and realizing that this is something they want to do, and them getting a faculty advisor and approaching their administration, it's such a wonderful leadership opportunity for them. And we try as best we can to place the teachers in a position of responding to student concerns and their role is to support the students. So the students need the educators as to help make transitions and to help comply with the laws and for just for guidance and questions about anybody doing something for the first time. But I think that's why, because it's something and because fundamentally it is nonpartisan, and we teach nonpartisanship when we do our trainings very deliberately. And we talk about if you're a theater kid, make sure that you invite the athletes and make it an inclusive, nonpartisan, good government program for your school. And that reminds me that Molly Ford, who's our director of youth programs, has joined us. Hi, Molly. And maybe at the end she can answer some more questions about like what our training looks like and how we get students and educators involved. But I think we take nonpartisanship very seriously, in part because look, I'm a parent and I wouldn't want someone coming in and doing a partisan registration drive in a high school who I felt very strongly was doing the wrong thing. And so we just try to be, respectful of our role and what the appropriate methods should be for a high school.
Mm-hmm. And I do want to emphasize for people that this is a student-led project. And there have been questions about how do we make connections with the schools, and we will go over that in a little bit. But the success, I think, and also the reason that it probably has not stirred up, any negative reaction, is that this is something that is coming up from the students. So for all of you on the Zoom, start thinking about high schoolers that because that is what we're going to be asking you to do. We are not, as adults, going to be barnstorming into the school. We are asking students to lead, and that is what makes it successful. So another question I have about young people, actually it's probably about all people, but young people, do they have unrealistic expectations, do you think? I mean, it is really hard to convince everyone your vote matters, your one vote matters, and you are going to make a difference. And a lot of the time people, or some of the time anyway, people who are voting particularly for the first time say, well, I voted, nothing changed. So do you find that they may have unrealistic expectations?
Yeah, it's I think there's unrealistic expectations more on the nothing we do matters side than that they're expecting too much too fast, because I do think there are a lot of people who come in, well, what could it do? It doesn't matter. And there's a big lift in helping people understand, actually, it does matter. Like voting isn't the only thing in the world. We want you to be involved in all kinds of things, just like your name suggests. But to try to help people understand, like, you have real power is something. They're hearing so many messages that are the exact opposite, that are telling them to be discouraged, and they're telling them that nothing will change, and that even when there are dramatic changes, trying to get them to discount them and say it's not enough. So I would say, to me, that's the bigger challenge. Of course, young people are, it's good that they're impatient, right? That they're young now, they're in school now. By the time, if they were patient forever, then nothing would change in schools, because they'll be gone. And so, I think that there's a lot to be done in terms of just history, pointing to historical examples of ways people have worked, over years to achieve something monumental. And they get that, but they're not hearing, just because of all the way education is today. I don't think they're hearing these examples enough, and to try to do something where, it's very important to have wins, right? So to structure programs, like, you can get a great win and then build from there, and to just reinforce and to provide education around, what it takes to create movement in the public sphere. But they are open to learning. I would just say, the students we work with.
Mhm. Do you do any follow-up with students who have registered, and what sort of follow-up do you do with the student leaders who have stepped up and run the drive?
Yeah. It's so interesting, because we're so small and really trying to solve a huge problem. So right now we want to do much more follow-up after they register. One of the things that we focus on is that, look, if you're not in the voter file, you're not getting any information about an upcoming election. You're not being contacted by candidates and campaigns. Once students are registered, they're in the voter file, and they're getting information in that way. We have an online voter registration portal through a tech company called TurboVote, and people can sign up for election reminders from them. So there's a lot of automated reminders, but it's something that we want to do, much more of as we develop more partnerships like this and become more involved in local communities. And then Molly can talk a little bit. I think this would be also partly a Molly question about just what do our youth programs look like, and how do the students respond and grow over time in them.
Great. Yeah, it would be great when we start getting into our, this is the process we're going to follow. We can ask Molly to speak up for a second. Just a second. I have to make somebody a co-host. Always get distracted. Okay. Let's see. I'm just sort of thumbing through some of the questions that people have asked.
It looks like there were a lot of questions popping up.
Yeah, a lot of them. I think we're able to answer some of them in the chat, which is great. And then there are some that I think we might want to finish the program before we get to. Let's see. Can you describe? I think this will be my last sort of general question. Can you describe an event? Just something that springs to mind that has worked out really well, and that you can think of to describe.
Yeah, I here's this one story that I love. Early on, this is before the pandemic. So we decided we have to hold an in-person event, and we invited people from all over. This was Los Angeles, because we're based in Los Angeles, and we don't believe in telling people in Phoenix and Tucson to do something that we're not doing here. So we held a training at University of California, and a teacher, I don't know, I think she found out about it just from an online post, but a teacher from Compton, California, which is 100% Black and Latino school district, saw invitation, and she had a group of students who she, on a Sunday morning, picked them up in their homes, drove them to USA. We had never met her before. They got the training. She's incredible. They're incredible. They went back and registered 350 students at Centennial High School in Compton. And then another teacher at another Compton school district, the two teachers did not know each other, but another school teacher heard about another similar training we were doing in Orange County later that year. She picked up her students, took them to Orange County, similar training. We put the two teachers together, and the two schools have been kind of side by side, and not just doing, you'll like this, but not just doing voter registration, but having candidate forums and political films and mock elections and doing all of these different things. And one of the stories that the first teacher said, she ended up writing an article about the experience, and she said that one of the kids in particular who she had brought that day had been starting to feel very disaffected, starting to come to school less, feeling just angry and frustrated, and that this opportunity to be a leader in this way just kind of turned around his whole orientation. He started being more engaged in school life and graduate. Anyway, I just thought, like, that's it. If we can do that, and do that all over the country, it can be really transformative in giving students hope about the role that they can play as leaders in their community.
Yeah, I love that. Actually, it's sort of looking on voter registration as the beginning, not the end of obviously a very long journey. And I am sure hopefully it shows in the data that if young people start voting, they will vote for the remainder of their lives.
Exactly.
So
yes, it's very much a habit. So can I just mention one of the comment that just came up about schools having groups that would be a natural place for this to exist in a school. And so absolutely, I'll just say a few things about that. 100% true. I mean, this is like an ideal club activity for one of the teachers in this Compton example was involved in Junior State of America, which has like mock state legislature program, and there's YMCA Youth in Government, which also does similar programming. And there can be affinity groups like GSAs for LGBTQ students or climate groups on campus, or student newspaper groups where you have teens who are interested in trying to figure out what's going on in their community and how they can make a difference. So there's many building on existing structures and not kind of reinventing the wheel is absolutely 100% a plus.
That's great. And I should mention, I was actually at the YMCA this morning, and I was standing waiting to get into my workout class, and there was a big sign talking about their youth government project. And so I took a picture of it. It's like, oh, I have to find out more about this. This would be a great.
Yeah, well, I can probably connect you, because there's chapters in many different places, and they're also great because they have existing, faculty advisors who understand, who know about government programs and who are a natural fit.
Yeah. Great. Well, I was that was 5 minutes well spent when I took that picture. So are there any final thoughts or words that you want to leave us with before we get into the nuts and bolts?
I think the final thing I'd say is it's so good you're doing this now, because it takes a long time. And I would say that you asked about young people being, kind of overly being too disappointed too easily. I would say to you all, if it doesn't hit every place you ask and everywhere, don't be discouraged. This is it does take a long time, and you're starting at exactly the right time. So yeah.
Great. Well, this is so exciting. And I'm so gratified to see a lot of people here. So thank you so much, Laura, and feel free to interject as we go through our how-to. You and Molly both, you can unmute and, just jump in. But what we're going to do now is walk through a very quick slide deck talking about our approach to how we're going to make this work here in Arizona. This is our pilot year, so please excuse us if we have a few fumbles, and hopefully I'm getting the right screen here to share. Are you seeing my presentation? Thumbs up, please. Okay, great, because I always manage to share the wrong screen. So, so this is us, Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. And we started by engaging with the state legislature. We have broadened very considerably to covering a great deal of state and local government. We really do not get involved to speak of in national, what's going on in DC, because the real action, believe me, is here at the state level. So what we're going to talk about is the power of the youth vote, and also next steps. This is where we're really getting into the nuts and bolts of how we're going to go about this. So obviously, this is what we're here about today. So we're talking about basically Gen Z, which is comprised of Americans born since 1997, the largest generation in American history. How do you like that? And it's also the most diverse. So some people call them plurals rather than Gen Z because they represent such an incredible diversity of our country. And soon, before too long, they will be the first non-white generation in America. Wait a minute, come on. So by 2028, Gen Z and its predecessor, the millennials, which were born 81 to 96, will make up over half of the voting population. And in 2024, they are going to be very, very close to that. You'll see that by 2036, they will be over 60% of the population. So some of the voting trends that we are starting to see are very reflective of the young people who are starting to become much more engaged and much more active in the issues. And that is what we touched on a few minutes ago. The way to get access to Gen Z voters is through the issues that they care about. And Laura talked about what some of those are. Right now, I consider inflation and gas prices to be one of those transitory problems, as we see that vary considerably. I'm sure this survey was taken right in the middle of, when gas prices were spiking. But it's not alone in terms of financial issues that the population is really struggling with, including down here, housing costs and healthcare costs. These are areas that we do not make easy in our society, is how young people are able to cope and sort of move into adulthood. We've heard a lot about kids who just are not leaving home. But these are very, very significant issues that young people are facing. Abortion, a very, very big issue to young people, and I venture to guess that propelled a lot of voting in the 22 midterms, and it is only gaining strength as an issue. Young people care very, very much about their reproductive rights. Jobs that pay a living wage, wouldn't that be nice? One of the things we've seen with the pandemic and a lot of the shakeup is that of the jobs that are entering the economy, many of them are lower paying, and that is really a very concerning trend. Climate change, it's an existential problem for us here on Earth. You only need to think of Greta Thunberg to know that young people really, really care about climate change. gun violence prevention. It just boggles my mind that there are kids who are graduating from high school now who have not gone a single year without doing some sort of an active shooter drill in their schools. That is so shocking to me and should not be something that young people have to cope with. We really need our young people to take a leadership role in this issue. It affects them so directly. March for Our Lives is one example of a movement that has engaged young people just enormously. Racism, they really care about racism. And as I said, some of the financial issues. So to reach people, you need to talk about the issues that matter to them, and then lead them to the possibility of voting in a direction that supports the issues that matter to them. But these are the issues that are on the ballot, make no mistake. In terms of why some of the more conservative members of our society are terrified of young people voting, you only have to look at this chart to see that Gen Z voters overwhelmingly are voting for Democrats. I stress that we are nonpartisan and all the information we give will be completely nonpartisan, but this is why sometimes obstacles are put in the path of making it easier for young people to register to vote. I think that many people in power are very fearful of losing their power. In one of the things, this is from the Civic Center's own research, in 2020, our two largest counties in Arizona, Maricopa and Pima, fewer than 15% of 18-year-olds were registered to vote. And that is really a shocking statistic. We'll send a follow-up email and we will send a link to this article with it. This is the data that's associated with that statistic. I'm not going to go over it right now because we have so much still to get to. And one of the things that the Civic Center has found is that once young people are registered, they do vote. So it is quite evident that the real obstacle is getting them registered. Of course, the United States is virtually the only country in the world that requires people to register before they vote. So we do not make it easy for anyone to vote, but giving them an opportunity to be registered is absolutely the first important step to political participation. So what I'm going to do now is ask for one of our youth organizers to unmute, and her name is Sarah. And we are so proud to have somebody who has already held a voter registration event in her school. So at this point, I'm going to ask Sarah to unmute and say a few words.
Hi everyone, I'm Sarah. I'm 17 years old. I'm currently a high school student, and I held a voter registration drive as part of CEBVY's first efforts at voter registration. This was just earlier this year in about April. So at this voter registration drive, I registered maybe 85 or 90 of my peers to vote out of around 120 eligible. And I'm going to just talk a little bit about why voter registration is so important, especially to me. I'm a little bit of a history buff. I took an AP US history course last year, and it was probably my favorite course ever. But my point is that over the years, I noticed that young people are the ones always pushing change. Even in the 1800s, people who would be considered young were voting to lift property requirements for voting. Of course, the right to vote wasn't expanded until much later. But even in the 1960s and beyond, we can see that young people were pushing for change, for civil rights, for an end to the Vietnam War, and much, much more. They often achieved their goals. And this still continues into today, where young people are protesting climate change and gun violence, achieving success with greater and greater measures. But the most effective thing that we can do to actually make this change and see it in our lives is to vote. We can put our ideas directly into office and on the ballot. We can put our ideas directly into affecting our lives. It was so impactful for me to be able to see my friends and my peers register to vote, and so excited to make that change. This is the opportunity we need to make that change in Arizona, and I hope that everyone will continue to take it.
Oh, thank you, Sarah. So Sarah is one of our youth leaders who is leading this initiative. So I am so excited you're leading the way. Sarah, thank you so much. So, oops. Let me go quickly through all this. So, how can I help? This is what we have been waiting for. As leading into the nuts and bolts, you have trusted us for 7 years to give you advice on the state legislature. And you've trusted us not only for solutions, but for actions, because that is what civic engagement beyond voting is all about. We don't just give you information. We tell you how to use your voice. We tell you what you can do in a way that is suited to your talents, your skills, and how you want to participate. You have trusted us, you have followed us, and we are really going to put that to the test because this is our most ambitious project yet. We have a plan to increase youth voter registration across Arizona. And now what I'm going to do is turn it over to Elijah, who is one of our other youth organizers. Elijah, can you unmute and take it from here?
I sure can. Thank you, Kathy. And thank you so much, everybody else, for being on here. Again, Elijah Watson, I'm one of the co-coordinators for CEBV's youth affiliate. Just want to talk a little bit about next steps and also what our program / project is looking like. This is a pilot, so if I mess up, yell at me. First off, we are trying to get high school students to run voter registration drives. This is something that we've been working on for a few weeks now, almost a few months. And so we are doing a project with the Civic Center, who you heard from earlier today, to get high school students on their high school campuses registering other young people to vote. We are trying to skirt away from this idea that we should have, 45-year-olds to 70-year-olds on high school campuses, yelling at high school students to care about the issues that they care about and get them to register to vote. That way, we think it is much more effective to have young people on high school campuses saying, I understand the issues that you care about because I'm also seeing those issues here on our high school campuses and the other issues across the country. And so just a little bit of some steps for you. If you're a high school student, this is your time to listen up. So come on in. So the first thing that we really want you to do is we want you to sign up. So we are going to be putting a form in the chat to register for an online training. One of them is on August 17th at 6 p.m. and the other one is on August 26th at 11 a.m. You can sign up with some of your friends. You can sign up with one of your clubs, whether that's like an honor society or a Young Democrats club, you name it, sign up. Or you can just dive in by yourself. Attending a training is mandatory because we're going to be training you, or the Civic Center is going to be training you to run a voter registration drive by yourself. Obviously, we're also going to be providing you with all of the training materials, the support that you need, the advice that you need, and also a democracy in the box, which we can talk about a little bit later. These voter registration drives are also going to be part of a competition. So I am forgetting and blanking on the dates in October, but at some point in October, we'll have an entire week where we will be having these high schools compete to register the most voters across the state. Yes, October 2nd through the 6th. Thank you, Trisha. And in these competitions, we'll be awarding high schools not only for getting the most high school students registered to vote on their high school campuses, but also for some other cool things, such as, you know, the most decorated table, most high school students involved in the high school registration program, actually registering other young people, and you'll be able to win awesome new prizes that we'll be deciding on a little bit later. And then just a little bonus mark, you do not need to be a registered voter to register other people to vote in the state of Arizona. So if you are a young person and you are not registered to vote, even better, because not only then will you be registering other people to vote, you will be a part of the count of people that are getting registered to vote. You are able to register to vote if you will be 18 years or older by November of 2024. So if you're interested, please do it. Next slide, please. And this is for everybody else. If you're not a high school student, if you are a college student, or if you're all the way up to any other age, this is the slide for you. Programs like this cost money. That's unfortunately the reality of the world that we live in. We need money to make these things happen. And so this Adopt a High School program that we are starting across the valley, we are looking to get anywhere between 15 to 20 high schools adopted across the valley. So when a young person registers to vote, registered to vote, when they register for one of those trainings and they complete that training, they're immediately put on our program. And so as a result of that, when you're adopting a high school, you are adopting one of the schools, one of the 20 schools that those high schoolers are going to be registering voters at. So if you adopt a high school today, tomorrow, whenever else, you will be adopting a high school, essentially meaning that you get all of the updates in regards to how many voters were registered at that high school campus that you have now adopted, or any other thing. It is $300 to $500 to adopt a high school, but also anything helps. And so we'll also be putting in the donation links for not only the Civic Center and Civic Engagement Beyond Voting, but both of our organizations, just so we can get any amount, because anything helps at the end of the day. Next slide. Also, and this is a big point, if you think that you don't know a high school student or you can't help with this process, you can. I promise you. I can guarantee that even if you do not have a young person in your family, whether that's a grandchildren or a child of your own, you know someone in your neighborhood, your neighbor definitely has a son or a daughter, you are guaranteed to at least even find some random kid in a Walmart or wherever else. And so those are the people that we really want to have involved in this program. This is a statewide program. And so we're trying to get anybody involved. We are not turning away young people from registering students on their high school campuses. So find a high school student specifically, find a young person specifically, bring them to us, and we will get them suited up and ready to go to run one of these high school registration programs on their campus. That's, yeah.
Great. Thank you so much, Elijah. So, again, we want to emphasize it needs to be a student-led project. If you don't happen to know a high school student, you might want to stop in at your neighborhood school, whatever your closest school is, and ask to talk to the administration, ask if somebody there might be interested. So there is a way to get involved if you think about it. So I am going to stop sharing. Hopefully people have been dropping the links because we have a form that we would like people to fill out. Yeah, okay. Laura Tarek, could you please drop the form one more time? What is going to make this successful is the fact that it is youth. It has to be youth-led. So we are just after 7. I can't believe it. We've pretty much finished on time. Molly, I don't want to take you by surprise, but is there anything that you would like to sort of unmute and talk about the training?
Absolutely. Hi, everyone. I'm Molly Ford. I'm the Director of Youth Programs at the Civic Center. Nice to see you all. I'll tell you a little bit about, in a speed round, what our Run and Drive training is all about. If you are a student, an educator, or if you're hoping to encourage a student or educator to come, I think this is helpful for you to know so you can talk about it with others. In our Run and Drive training, the first thing that we start with is how to get smart, how to know about the rules and guidelines in your state, your county that guide how to register to vote in your area. That's bare bones. That's the first thing that we have to, that we want everyone to feel comfortable, confident, able to go to their principal and say, hey, I want to do this and I know how to do this right. Next up, we talk about, we explore with students and educators, what's your school context like? Are you in a huge school and you have 200 eligible students you can register? Well, your drive is going to look this big. Maybe your school is a little smaller. Maybe you have the opportunity to go classroom to classroom and talk about why you care about registering to vote. Maybe you can walk through in a PowerPoint presentation each of those questions on the voter registration application so that every student is able to go through it together and talk about, get any questions they have answered as they're registering. But also, I think the most important part of the presentation is thinking about how can you institutionalize this in your school? How can you make this a part of your school tradition? Because we know that students graduate every single year. We need this effort to last. We need this outreach to bring voter registration to the school, not just this year, but for every year from now on. And so we talk to students about how to make this a part of your school curriculum, how to partner with teachers to make this a tradition. We've seen schools, maybe like the junior class leadership runs a voter registration drive for their seniors as like a parting gift before they leave high school. We want to make this feel a part of the school community. We want the ideas to come from students and educators. We're just here to help support. We're also here to support with our Democracy in a Box toolkit, which Elijah mentioned. This is our free toolkit that contains clipboards, stickers, buttons, t-shirts, flyers, posters, all of the things that you need to get a drive off the ground in your school community. Tons of customizable physical and digital resources so that students can promote, raise awareness about an upcoming drive, remind students to bring their appropriate IDs so that they can register the day of, and so that they, again, can feel comfortable, confident, ready for the day when they get to register all their peers. So hope that gives you some insight into what our Run and Drive workshops look like and some of the support we're going to be able to provide for these schools that are embedding these efforts in their campuses. And I really look forward to working with students across Arizona to make this happen.
No, thank you so much, Molly. So I hope that answers some of the detailed questions. One thing I want to clarify before we sign off is, as we have said, this is a student-led project. We are here as facilitators. We are here as support. But the important thing is for the people on this call, the people we're reaching out to step up, to find the students or to be a student if you are one, and to get them to sign up for the training. So I just want to make that clear. We are not targeting specific schools. We are relying on you to bring the schools to us so that we can provide all that support. If it's not a student-led project, it will probably not be as successful. So that is our presentation. We will be sending out a follow-up email. I want to thank you all so much for coming. This is a hugely ambitious project. We are unbelievably fortunate to be pairing with the Civic Center to work on this. They have experience, they have materials, they have training. And so we are very, very excited and very lucky. Laura, is there anything? I saw you unmuted. Is
No,
there anything-
we feel the same. We feel so lucky to be partnering with you and to have your resources and expertise on local issues and all of the enthusiasm that is reflected in all of these great questions. So I hope you all will both talk about, if you don't know high school students, talk about it with your friends. All of this is so new to so many people, and it will, your friends know high school students or parents, it spreads. And that's how everything has happened in this effort, is by people who care talking to one another. So I hope you'll embrace this and run with it. And I can't wait to see you midway and at the end to reflect and to continue this growing. And please do make contributions to civic engagement beyond voting. It does take quite a lot of resources to do this work, because we're building it for the first time, and it's like making an investment in the social capital that is needed to make these relationships and to plant these seeds is a very big effort. And so I really encourage you to, of course, contribute to us, and contribute to both groups. But I want to endorse the giving aspect of this, because it takes quite a bit to put this on.
Thank you so much. This has been a wonderful hour. I want to thank all of my team, all of the Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. Thank you, Molly. Thank you, Sarah. Thank you, Elijah. We are so incredibly fortunate to have the best team on earth with Civic Engagement Beyond Voting. So thank you all for coming, and we look forward to working with you. Bye-bye.